Zome Design is a one-stop shop for custom branded merchandise.
We're going to see one of the best tools in the industry for the epilogue laser. We're going to create a patch.
Bringing up a basic item and elevating it with the laser, we can get fine detail that normally can't be accomplished through embroidery.
In this episode, they'll show us how they elevate branded apparel by applying handcrafted, custom faux leather patches to deliver a unique, high-end retail-inspired look. On this episode of Adventures in Apparel Decorating, we're in Spokane, Washington, home of Gonzaga University, the 1974 World's Fair, and this ginormous wagon. Zome Design is a one-stop shop for custom branded merchandise. From apparel decorating, promotional products, large format printing, and everything in between, they set themselves apart by providing a superior customer experience where no job is too big or too small and brand image is everything. How important is it, the whole idea of branding with merchandise for companies, which is what you guys excel at? Why is that so important for companies to have?
I believe the branding is one of the most important things because you can always find a decorator to do anything you want, so it starts with a good design. If you don't have a good design, you can't print. The first thing we do is do brand research. We look at their brand, see who their customers are, and what would be something that their customers or their employees, their tribe, would relate to. Then we start looking at different techniques, whether it's in apparel or promotional items, and then trying to fit something that matches their brand that's going to get their message out there. When I created the name Zome Design, I specifically focused on design. I didn't want it to be Zome Apparel or Zome Screen Printing because your brand is not just in a screen printed t-shirt. And it's not screen printing that we sell, that's just a tool we use to help communicate your brand message.
Braden, how did you guys get started?
I started the business out of my fraternity in college back in 2006. We started with the fraternity itself, and then it grew into other philanthropies, and then the word kind of spread. So it kind of started to grow to where I was doing screen printing embroidery for Greek chapters all across the country. And then it also turned into my home-based churches, and it kind of grew to family and friend businesses, and it kind of grew from there.
Were you doing the production in-house, or were you just contracting it out?
At the time, we were contracting out to shops all across the country, depending on if it was in Florida, we'd find a Florida guy. If it was in Arizona, and then we had a couple local Washington guys that were helping us out. And
then you brought it in-house. Why did you make that decision?
I was watching a lot of market trends and I wanted to try new processes, but the contract shops had a lot of setup fees or they wouldn't be willing to work with my little niche projects. And so by having the production in-house, we could control it and we could test out new things, bring in new inks, new threads. We could do a lot of testing and product development.
Right. And then you partnered up with Rusty. Talk about how that happened.
Yeah, so a few years into it, I graduated from college, moved back to Spokane, was working out of a design agency, so I had a lot of experience with how agencies work, and I knew that I wanted something different for the industry. I wanted to be more of a branding and agency focus. And so, but then we had lost the control of having that production, so I knew I needed help to run a facility, and so Rusty came on.
My biggest role here is hiring our staff and making sure that we get the right fit for the culture here at Zome. So taking Braden's vision and making sure that I bring that in by the correct hires. We're going after design more than just screen printing, and so we want to find people that are creative and want to do new things. They're empowered to give us ideas from what they're seeing in the industry, and then they understand that we're going to take it seriously and try to bring it to the marketplace. So I think the culture from that standpoint is a very creative culture.
So talk about what we're doing today and how that's elevating the garment.
So with the JERZEES quarter zip, we want to do something a little new, bringing up a basic item and elevating it with a high-end leatherette patch. The great part of the leather patch is with the laser we can get fine detail that normally can't be accomplished through embroidery.
So what are we doing next?
We're going to head over to our laser department and we're going to create the patch.
All right, let's get to it. All right, I'm with Siri Paul here at Zome, and we're going to learn how to turn this piece of leatherette into that patch. This is going on a quarter zip fleece. How do we know how big to make it? What's the determination there?
That kind of varies on the customer themselves and then also what's going to fit your product. Zohm wanted to do a circular one and not keep it too big so it doesn't take up the whole left chest. But the nice thing about these patches and the capabilities is you kind of customize them all to the design or the area of the garment that you're hoping to fit it with.
During your normal day, how many patches can you make?
I'm probably making anywhere about 300 to 500 patches in a day. On a quick turn or high volume day, I've made upwards to 1,000 patches in a day.
Walk us through what happens, because we're going to cut all the way through the material, but we're also lasering just the top part so the color underneath shows through. So how do you determine that?
We'll overlay the design and tell it the areas that we want to etch. And then basically within the laser program, I go in and I say on those etched areas how much power and speed I want the laser to hit on that area. And that combination is going to vary our engraving depth, helping you hit smaller details, going a little bit slower or faster. We're doing two backings on this project because we're actually going to combine them into a single patch on the item, so the felt will stick out behind the leatherette patch and it's kind of a double layered aesthetic to the patch to help stand out.
Can you walk us through exactly what we're going to be doing?
Yeah, so the very first step that we're going to be doing today is setting up the art and preparing it for the laser. And then once all of our art is set up and prepared, we're going to prepare our material for the laser, and then we're going to combine both of them, put them in the laser bed and watch everything laser out and etch and hopefully get a nice clean job on the patch product. The first step in getting our material ready is figuring out the leather color. So there's a number of different leatherette colors to choose from, and they all have different cores, which is the color in which you laser etch down to. So we have a standard black, so rawhide to black, dark brown to black, but then we also have some metallics, such as black to gold, rustic to silver, and then rustic to gold down here as well. Today we're going to be working with the standard rawhide to black. Now the job does require the 3M backing on that, so that's the first step, is we have to attach the 3M backing to the leatherette sheet.
Okay.
So we've got our 3M roll here, and then we're just going to line up our leatherette sheet. So there's some trapped air bubbles, so I just like to take a smooth surface and run it down the back to help get some of those air bubbles out so that the adhesive is staying nice and even to the leatherette. We've got our 3M back leatherette, and now we're ready to take it over to the laser and start etching and cutting our patches.
Great, let's see how that looks.
All right. So this is the laser we're going to be using today. It's our Fusion Pro, and then right here's where we're going to be laying down the material. I'm going to close this. And now we're gonna go to the computer and line up all of our design on top of the material. So right here, we've got our patch that we're gonna be etching all set up on a sheet. And what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna print this to our laser now. And it's actually gonna give us a visual of the laser bed. And now we're going to line up our design over the material. So we press print on the computer program and it sent our file over here. So we click on our file and we've got our material set up. So the laser's just gonna map out the area in which it's going to be engraving and cutting. Once we're ready, we're just gonna press go. So right now the laser is going through and etching the design on all the patches. And then next, it's gonna come back and individually cut the patches one by one.
Laser etched leather patches are very popular right now. A simple way to add extra appeal to a patch is by adding a felt backing, which is a unique way to add more retail appeal to your garment.
And so now we've got our second material, which is gonna be the felt. And we're going to cut our felt circles from this now. So our next step is a finishing step. Sometimes when you laser leatherette, there can be a small residue or like a soot char from the laser itself. So we just want to clean the patch so it is all nice and clean before it gets sent off. Now we have both pieces, our leatherette patch and our felt patch, and now we're ready to attach them to the garment itself.
Great. we're in the embroidery department and Nevaeh is going to be hooping everything. So Braden, walk us through the action.
So right now we're going to apply a piece of backing stabilizer inside the sweatshirt, and we're using black because it's a dark garment. And then now we're going to be aligning the hoop with the center of the top collar seam and then the middle of the sleeve. Now we're going to take the hooped garment over to the embroidery machine and lock it into place. Since this is a bulk order, we're going to have it on our 8 head, so she's going to have to do this 8 different times to fill up the heads of the machine. So the next step here is we're going to trace the design to make sure that the needles won't hit any part of the hoop. Now that we've traced the design and we know that it fits within the hoop, we're going to run one sample to make sure that it turns out good before we do all 8. So right now the embroidery machine is running an underlay stitch to stabilize the fabric. This last stitch is putting a placement stitch so she knows exactly where to place the patch. So now we're going to apply a spray mist adhesive on the back of the felt. This is going to help it stay in place while it sews. We're now going to apply our first tack down stitch to hold the felt in place. One trick we use is using a 3M adhesive on the back of our faux leatherette, so when we place it, it stays in place during the sew process. And she's going to use the tack line as a placement for where to place the patch. So now that it's done sewing, we've taken it off the embroidery machine and we're going to take it over to quality control to clean up any loose threads, cut out the backing, and clean up any potential hoop marks. So now she's looking at it, making sure the design is centered, that it's not crooked or anything like that, and then we're going to check for any loose threads. So now we can see this garment here has a loose thread, so she's going to go and snip that out. So now we're going to remove the backing from the inside of the garment. You have to be very careful to make sure that you don't actually snip any of the bobbin thread or the garment. And now we're going to take it to the steamer to remove any potential hoop marks.
If you're just getting started into doing patches, instead of doing a hat, try using a flat like the JERZEES quarter zip, because a flat surface is obviously easier to embroider. So Brandon, I really love how this turned out. Why do you think it looks so great?
I think it looks great because there's multi-dimension to it. The faux leather patch by itself, I think would kind of be too flush with the garment, too flat. Adding it on top of the black felt backing just kind of gives a little bit of a pop to it that adds some dimension to the design.
So Brandon, why did you choose the JERZEES quarter zip?
Well, I think that a hooded sweatshirt's a little too casual for the workplace. So by using a quarter zip that you could then pair it with a dress shirt, I think adding that on top of the leather patch makes it a classy piece for any workplace.
Thank you so much for today, Brayden. It was awesome.
Thanks. It's always a great time with you, Marshall.
This has been another episode of Adventures in Apparel Decorating. We'll catch you next time.